Hey, what's your story? You ever been asked that? Ever been asked, just as a conversation starter, hey, what's your story? It's a great way to start. Kind of opens up a broad space for us to tell somebody who we are. So I kind of like it. What's your story? But it points to a much deeper truth. Ultimately, we are all storytellers. We walk around with this constant story in our heads that we tell ourselves and about the world around us, the people around us. It's constant storytelling, revision of story, invention of story, telling of story. That's going on all the time in our heads. And then when we are out in the world, we are always telling stories. Whether you're a chief financial officer of a corporation, you're telling a story through a particular lens about your company, or a yoga teacher. You're telling a story about how the body works and how there are benefits to moving the body in a certain way, or whatever you're up to, you're telling a story. Now, I raise this so that we can all get conscious about our stories. What is the story I'm telling myself? What is the story I'm telling other people about myself and about the world? And there are certain stories that are better stories than other stories. So, for example, stories that map to experience, that map more accurately to experience, are better than those that don't map to experience. I hate to say the more realistic, because finding out what is real is a tricky question for another set of videos or books, perhaps. But a story that is reasonably accurate in describing experience is better than one that doesn't resonate with experience at all. So we want accurate stories. We want stories that are inclusive and broad. So, for example, look what happened to the story of traditional Christian religion, which was going along, putting along, this is our story, this is the story of the way the universe works, the way God works, who you are in relation to all of that. And then telescopes and microscopes came along, and Galileo said, well, wait a minute, the story that we're telling ourselves is a little bit off. We're actually not the center of the cosmos. We're orbiting around the sun. So we revised our story as a culture. So we're constantly revising our story to make it fit our experience. So that's one piece about story that's worth noting. We also want it to be inclusive. We want it to be able to incorporate all sorts of different types of experiences. So the biggest possible story is perhaps arguably better than a story that explains this but not that. This is why the physicists are always trying to come up with a way to, how can we harmonize Einstein's theories of relativity with quantum mechanics? It's still tricky for them. They're trying to come up with a bigger story that fits both of those models. It's why Ken Wilber is such an innovation for many of us. Ken Wilber, if you don't know, is called the father of modern integral theory. Integral theory tries to fit science, mythology, religion, spirituality into a grand scheme, so we know where they all fit, psychology, all of that. Where do all of these pieces fit? We also want a story that isn't arbitrary, that one that's based on value, at least I do, based on values. Mark Goffney, or actually David J. Temple, which is a collaboration involving Goffney, Zach Stein, and Ken Wilber, came out with a book just about a year ago on first principles and first values, highlighting the importance of having our stories based on actual values and actual first principles. So if we can found our story based on value, we have some advantages that, again, are a subject of a book, and I just told you a book to read about it, over stories that are not founded on value, that are simply arbitrary stories. Next, we want stories that somehow empower us and free us up and open us up to new possibilities rather than get us into a confined box so we have no wiggle room. One process facilitator that I was working with 30 years ago put it this way. He said, if you have two stories that seem equally valid, why not choose the one that is more empowering than the other? One last point is this. A lot of the shape and design and plot of your story that you're telling, you're not conscious of. It's lodged in your body and lodged in your subconscious. So your mind is only a co-author of your story, because your subconscious and even your body are also co-authors. And so in any given moment, your story in that moment is the product of a collaboration between this whole world of the unconscious and your conscious mind, which points to the value of all of us doing shadow work in the Jungian sense and body work in the somatic energy sense, so that we can raise more of our storytelling into the conscious realm, which allows us a good bit more freedom and flexibility in the telling of our story. So, what's your story? I'd love to hear what your story is. Be well.